Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about scar tissues. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot to think about when you just think of the words scar tissue. So, thankfully, I have Danny here, a returning guest on my show, who's going to help us really think about this in a whole new light because there's a lot to think about. So, thank you so much, Danny, for coming on my show once again. Let's just dive right in. When you hear the word scar tissue, what does that initially make you think about?
Well, I'll tell you what it used to make me think about.
It all.
Trauma, pain.
Yeah.
Now, I wrote a book, and as I was writing, I was really struggling with the perfect title
Yeah.
and what really encompasses a difficult journey. And I came across a quote. I'm going to get to what scar tissue means, but the quote um, was basically this: that because scar tissue is made of fibers and not skin cells, it's actually stronger than ordinary skin. And unlike skin, it doesn't have hair or sweat glands or blood vessels. So scar tissue is actually stronger than like normal tissue. And it's because it's a healed wound. So when I hear scar tissue, I think of a wound that's healed and it's
Yeah.
got a story to tell.
It does. To be honest, that's what I think about scars. When I see someone's scars, I'm like, you know what? You're resilient. You have been through something that was meant to break you, that was meant to tear you apart, but you kept on pursuing forward. You kept on going. And when you have that scar at first, when you have that open wound, you don't feel okay. You know what I mean? You don't
No.
feel like things are gonna be possibly better. If it's like a paper cut, yeah, it hurts my soul every time it hits. It's like fluid, some type of water. But when it's like a big wound on your arm, on your chest, on your body, oh
Hmm.
my goodness, that takes a toll on you. And every time you look at it, it can bring you flashbacks, and people can have PTSD, and it's crazy because it's like, will you look at it and always feel sorrow? You know what I mean? When will it remind you, put you in a place of sorrowfulness and just sadness of knowing what that moment was? Or are you gonna have strength and like pride knowing
Hmm.
that you've overcome that? And I think like it's on both ends of the spectrums when it comes to those scars, because you never know what someone is going to subjectively perceive when it comes
Right.
to scars. So that's why I love this. And when you said you were having a difficult issue picking this out for a title for your book, I mean, scar tissue is low key the best title for your book, considering the fact that you went through so many surgeries throughout your life. So when you look at your scars, what does that make you feel? Like, what does that make you think about?
I look at my scars as something now to be proud of. It took me a
Mm,
while because originally, you have these scars, they're kind of embarrassing, but every scar is a story. And for me, my scars represent pain and trauma that's been healed. You talk about, or you mentioned open wounds. An open wound cannot heal. It has to heal, and there's scar tissue from that. And that's kind of like the badge saying, hey, this wound is healed, and here's what's stronger now. And so I really look at scars as or scar tissue as being like it's a concept, it's a mental attitude. It's like, yes, I'm going through this horrible thing, but I'm going to become stronger. And it's because I perceive or I see purpose in what I'm going through. I'm going to become stronger through this.
yeah.
So for me, I don't go flashing people, but I'm proud of my scars now because, and it's true. Like if you see somebody with a scar, your first inclination is, what's the story? How did you get that scar? And so to me, when I see my scars and people ask me what happened, that's an opportunity just to say, look, here's my story, and let's talk about it.
Right? Because I mean, your scars are right on your chest. So do you do like the Superman pose? Like, like you can't
No,
really do that.
I haven't been kicked out of public places yet or done that, but it does come up. Like I've got scars like on my stomach and my wrists, and there's the all surgery related.
Yeah.
But it does give me an opportunity to say, look, here's a story. And it's a good story and it's a story of healing. And that's what I love being able to share.
Exactly. The story of healing. Oh, I just that alone, hopefully can people you can have people realize like it's about healing. If our body takes time to heal, imagine our hearts. And I think that's one of the hardest things is that we have scars in our hearts that people don't see. You know what I mean? We have
Hmm.
scars in our hearts that some people feel that are still open wounds. You know what I mean? So what would you say to those people that are going through that right now?
The natural question to ask, like if you're injured physically, emotionally, in whatever way, the natural question is to ask, why? Why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
I didn't deserve this. And so I wrestled with this in my book. Like I don't think you'll ever get a satisfactory answer. Hey Mitzi, this is why this happened to you. Hey Danny, this is why this happened to you. I don't think I'll ever know. And it's the first question we always ask.
Yeah.
But I do think if we ask, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
What am I being taught in this? Suddenly, I've got all kinds of answers as to, hey, I can learn resilience. I can learn just being persistent. I can learn to be disciplined. Like I can learn all kinds of things through this. And so that when people see your scars and they ask you about this, I can't say what, sorry, I can't say why, but I can say, here's what I've learned.
Yeah. It's basically switching your whys to what. Because
Exactly.
when you were talking about that, and you're absolutely right, we always go to the why. Why me? Why him? Why my child? Why my spouse? Why my mother? Why? But we never ask how we can switch it, what we can develop from it, what we can learn from it, how we can evolve from it. And I think that's what I loved about your book is when you put your parents' perspective in there and how they devoted themselves deeper into God just so that they can know that their child will make it through these surgeries. Oh my
Hmm.
goodness, I love that perspective when you added that in there. I really did because it made you realize from a different perspective, from the parents' perspective, like they had they had an open wound themselves. They had a wound
Yeah.
that was exposed because that was their child, and they knew that they had to give it to a better, a higher power because they could only do so much. All they can do is give you to a doctor, to a medical field, to hopefully resolve the issue that was being presented in front of them. You know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
fact that they relied on God, and the fact that they grew a greater faith foundation together. Now that
Hmm.
is also inspiring, and that's also what I loved about your book because people don't do that, or parents usually go drift apart because it's
Yeah.
back and forth. But you brought unity back together. You show people a different way how wounds can unite instead of separate the way that people expect wounds to do. And I
Yeah.
think um a lot of comes down to forgiveness of yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to forgive yourself for the things that you can't control. And then you got to let that go and move forward and move on. I mean, I'm assuming you talked to your parents when you were writing your book. I mean, what other details, can you share about that?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. As I was writing, if you look at it, the first 11 chapters, it's really my parents' story.
Yeah.
It's them dealing with me as a child and having to go through all this. And when I was thinking about writing, of course, I was a little kid. There's a lot of details I didn't know. So I asked them. And
Yeah.
I probably spent with them probably 3 or 4 months
Wow.
just getting details and surgery dates and procedure names back and forth. And they told me every time they went back and looked at things, it was like reliving it.
Yeah.
And I was at a book launch about a year ago, and somebody came up to my parents. Of course, my dad was there, and he spoke briefly. And somebody asked, they said, "You must be really proud of this book being out there." And his answer kind of surprised the person. He said, it's been one of the hardest things because they've had to willingly subject themselves to going through that over and over and over. But I think for them, they are incredibly proud that it's that they see purpose even in this book being written and in how I've handled it. For them, it's kind of completed their journey, their part of it.
Yeah. It's like a bittersweet moment. You know
It
what I
is.
mean? Because it's sweet to know that that my son has evolved and grown and he's able to look at this in a different perspective and to help others out there. But it's a bitter moment for myself because now it brings back those memories. It brings back those feelings that those fear, that dread, that anticipation. All of those
Yeah.
emotions are real. They are valid and they live within us. You know what I mean? Through time and time again. So to hear your dad say that, I mean, I think it's anything but it's validating. You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
validating that he has scars within. You know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
have scars without. So it's like without like on the outside of you. So you guys either way, you guys complete each other because you needed him to have your story and he needed you to even have that testimony, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing. So I have to ask you, are you going to turn this book into a kid's book? Because I think you have probable cause to make this into like a little kids book because I could imagine being a mother and having my child in the hospital room and just passing them this a book in a child's form and be like, listen, read this. This child went through this. You can go through this too. I think that'll be inspiring. I just to plant the seed in your mind, you know what I mean? You should think about it.
Actually, it's funny you say that. I have.
What's
I
some of it?
have like spun this into a devotional, and I've also had early talks with another artist about what a kid's book would look like. And this it can be like, going through something very traumatic. It can be very heavy. So I
Mm,
had the idea of, it's not people, it's an animal.
mm.
And the child is like a sheep and he's very scared. But when he's brave, he sees himself as a lion going through this. So I'm kind of playing with the idea and the exact story, but absolutely, yes, I've thought of it.
That's an interesting story that you chose a sheep to be a lion because I remember having a guest on my show who was talking about how a lion cub was born in amongst sheep and he thought that he was a sheep. So when another lion came to attack the sheep, he thought that he was going to get attacked, but in reality the lion was coming to remind him that he's a lion and not
Hmm.
a sheep. You know what I mean? So to either way, that's a good resemblance because it just reminds people of what we have within us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not to get distracted by the outside, you know? And I noticed that a lot of people who have like physical scars on the outside of their face, they have a lot they have complex, you know what I mean? They feel ashamed, they
Yeah.
feel like society just is pushing them away as a reject because they hold their scars on their face and they no longer look the way that they used to look, you know,
Right.
and that's a big burden on them. The hearts are so heavy with those individuals. So what type of advice can you give to somebody who may be going through that right now?
I've had that as a kid where I was embarrassed. I'd cover up. It was challenging. But I think when you respond that way, where you are ashamed, you are embarrassed, and I'm saying this as somebody who's gone through it, so I'm not passing judgment. It means you're still processing, you're still going through it. You have not become scar tissue. Like you have not overcome. I don't know if that's the right word, but it just tells me there's still a struggle. And maybe that will always be there, but maybe you struggle less down the road.
Mm,
Um, it's a challenge because you want to fit in, you want to be like everybody else, but you're not. And there's something unique. And that's why I say, why don't I look like that? You
yeah,
can't. I think that the rule is you have to ask, what can I learn?
yeah,
And I've seen some of the most, I call them my brothers and sisters. I've seen people that have gone through horrible things and they're scarred or they're missing limbs. They're my brothers. They're my sisters because they've faced trauma, they've healed from it, but they're not ashamed of it.
Hmm. I love that. And I think one thing that you said, like a light bulb came into my head when you said it was, it brings me back to what somebody else said once was, we ask questions for the wrong time and we receive answers in a different time. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And that's one thing that that really sticks with me is that we think we want the answers to a specific question right now in this moment, but sometimes we won't get it right now. We'll get it later on in time when it comes and processed to us, once we've healed a little bit more, once our tissue is in an open wound still gushing out blood. So when you talked about how, you still haven't developed that scar tissue, and you're still in that sensitive spot, that wound is still open, and where you still feel that shame, where you still feel that guilt, I think time is going to be their best friend, because time and just having an open mind, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
I think it will really help anybody who is going through this open wound stage to realize, like, it will eventually become a scar. It will eventually cover over and you will be healed and you'll be okay. And when you do and you are ready for that stage, um I think the most important part is just reminding yourself that you're still whole. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And when you talked about how I've met people who have lost limbs, I have lost, you know what I mean, who you know what I mean? They no more leg, no more arm. And it's just like you're still whole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because you're one limb less doesn't mean that you're less of a human being, or anything like that. And I think reminding us that we are whole no matter what form we are portrayed in, I think that
Hmm.
is something beautiful to keep in our hearts, because, man, the world and trying to be like the world and trying to be accepted by the world can be so much of a burden that you forget that you're unique as you are, and that you do have your unique story. So I appreciate you saying those words, because I think it's a great reminder that we are so similar in so many ways, but we are also so unique in so many ways that to taint ourselves or to diminish ourselves to try to conform to something else it doesn't fit. You know what I mean? Like my kids right now, they like these little Kate play looking thing shows, and
Hmm.
they have this box where it's like a triangle and they're squares, clay, and they're trying to squeeze themselves in this triangle form, and then they lose all these parts of themselves when they go in, and then they become a triangle, but they lose all the other goodness that was part of them. And it just made me
Yeah.
realize, like, we are squares, or we are circle, we are a certain shape as we are, and we are trying to force ourselves into a different shape because what, it looks better, it acts better, it perceives better. So I
Yeah.
think that is something that is like requires a lot of self-work. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, I've even been asked at heart surgery, but I think I would fundamentally be a completely different person. I don't like to think about who I might have been because that everything that I've gone through has taught me something.
Mm.
And I think for anybody, the underlying truth in all this is you have to assume or you have to go into it believing there's a purpose for what you go through. You have to start there.
Yeah. You have to believe that there's a purpose through this. And I think that's the hardest thing is people get stuck in a pity party on the wrong questions, like we were talking about earlier. They really get stuck in that portion of life, and I see it all the time. I mean, you could drive around in any neighborhood, doesn't matter if it's rich, doesn't matter if it's high class or in the slums, anything in between. We are all going through this identity crisis, you know what I mean, of trying
Mhm.
to find who we are and where we belong. And we start comparing ourselves to other people. And I've been diving real deep into the Bible lately, and there's these so many comparison traps that just trap us into believing that we are not good enough, or we're not ready. But I feel like having that scar tissue, seeing that scar tissue reminds us that we are perfect because it heals on its own. You know what I mean? You didn't do
Mhm.
anything. Yeah, maybe you put neosporin on it, or antibacterial on it, and some alcohol, dab it down. You know what I mean? Clean it up so it doesn't
Yeah.
get a bacterial infection. But it just shows that if you don't do that, if you don't clean it up, if you don't maintain it to stay right, even in your mind, you know what I mean? It allows you to have that bacterial infection. It allows you to get sepsis. It allows you to
Yeah.
to go deeper into our hearts, and it can change our hearts. You know what I mean? In a negative way. So it is something deeper, 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 deeper. So I guess when it comes to back to your book, when you were writing your portion about your experience, was that an easier process because it was just like you don't have to talk to anybody and you just have to just relive it in your own mind, or just the fact that you had to relive it in your own mind, was that hard to process like it was for your father?
Um, I I cried a lot when I wrote in
Yeah.
private, but I found it incredibly therapeutic because what I at least in my brain what happens is you have all these ideas and they're just it's like a pinball machine and sometimes it's for years. But
Yeah.
what I found was writing is like pouring it all out. And now all those ideas, they're here. They're in a book. And what's actually happened for me is all the trauma that growing up I just thought, "Oh, this is normal." I realized as an adult looking back, that wasn't normal. I was trying to process things a certain way. But what I found it just helped me focus it all. And now there's a lot of details that I'm actually starting to forget because they're not up here anymore.
Mm.
So my encouragement, like if you've gone through, I don't, it could be a divorce, you lose a parent, a child, write about it. I don't mean publish it. I just mean write. See your own words on paper because we say things in our head that we would never say to somebody else. But I think for me, when I wrote and I saw what I was thinking, I realized, man, I got some work to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense because not only when you're writing it, you use when you're focusing on a certain section of the memory or of the experience, once you write that down and take a second and you go back in, you realize, hold on, there was more to this situation. There was more that was happening in the room. There was more that was going on. And when you're able to take that into consideration, it gives you a bright it gives you a like a brighter understanding of what's happening. So
Perspective.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, perspective. Thank you, that's the word I was looking for. It's slipped my mind. But yes, that's exactly what it is, because you allow yourself to really see things in a different light. You're no longer living a mirage, and you're able to identify the voices that are really yours,
Yep.
God's voice, and the nonsense voices that are here to disrupt you and to make you believe something that was never there. You know what I mean? So once you do that, I think that is a beautiful, just therapeutic motion, because, like you said, you don't have to necessarily publish it, but you do
Nope.
have to get it out in some way, shape, or form. You got to do it in song form. Sing it, ladies. Sing it, gentlemen. But if you got to write it out, write it. I think that is just expressing it through art. You know what I mean? And I
Yes.
think that's the beauty of art, is that there's no wrongs that you can do. And I think that's why I feel so sad for artists who represent like the dark side. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
They are really judged, but only if they realize there's so many people who feel that darkness. There's so
Yeah.
many people who feel this turmoil within them. So you can't judge them because you want polka dot and rainbows and a unicorn frolicking in a field, when instead you're getting somebody who drew a picture of them like separating their skull over and over and over again. You have to ask, well, why
What?
they did
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
what made them feel this way. You know what I mean? Or you don't even have to ask, you could just look at it and feel what they feel. And that's why I love going to art shows and things like that, because man, one, I walked by and I felt that artist's emotions in the drawings, and I feel it when I read the book. When I was reading your book, I was there with you. I was just like, I was there with your parents. I was like, wow. I was just like, oh my goodness, I couldn't imagine. But then the more I would read your parents' perspective, I was like, wow, that gives me peace. That gives me peace of mind that if God forbid my child ever has to go through something like this, I know that who I need to lean on more is just God. Because the
Yeah.
fact that your parents lean more on God with every every visit, every doctor's visit they went to, every time they had to talk to a doctor. I mean, that right there made me realize like it, the connection is real. You know what I mean? The connection is real. We just have to tap into it, you know?
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And I've talked to people even recently. I know someone that's gone through really, really dark trauma, and she's dealt with it through poetry.
Mm,
I know people that write music, but the important thing is they're processing it, right? And I know, like, to your point with my parents, I think the divorce rate for children with congenital heart disease, like the parents, it's like almost 90%
yeah.
because it does tear families apart. It is a horrible, um, it's just very traumatic. And they saw purpose in what they were going through, and they just said, God, get us through this together. And it's been such a long journey, but I just think that's been the resounding theme that I want to just get out there is like there's reasons why we go through things. We may not know it, but let's learn from it.
Yeah.
Because
There's
somebody else is going to hear this podcast or read your book or listen to your music or see your art and they're going to say, I need that.
exactly. And it doesn't have to be right now. It could be years from now. And that's what I tell myself. It's like I'm not publishing or I don't publish for the now. I don't publish for the people who are in now of this day. No, 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 no. I publish for the people for tomorrow. I publish for the
Mhm.
people who are going to come years later, who are going to need this information, who's going to learn from it when it calls their hearts. You know what I mean? And when we have to listen to our heart, we have to lean on it and know that it's trying to heal something within us and we can't block it off because there is, like you said, there's purpose in our walk, there's purpose in what we go through, and it's our testimony. So I guess just a random question I have to ask you:
Mhm.
if you could have any superpower, what would your superpower be? Because I don't
um,
think I asked you that question last time, and I really do want to
no.
know, with everything that you've been through now and that you're striving for, I mean, what could be your superpower?
See, I've actually given this some thought, not recently, but like there's no point in being able to fly unless you have
Okay.
invincibility because you're going to hit a plane or a bird. And so
Very
if you're
true.
just really weak and you can fly, like, or you're going to get really cold. So I don't know. I'd have to go with like a combo. I want
Okay.
fries with my superpower. I'd need like invincibility and flying.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense because I had somebody talk on my show who's like, "Oh, I just want to fly. I just want to just go from one place to another." And I was just like, "Oh, okay, cool. I got you. That's great." But I never considered the fact of me hitting a bird, a swarm of bees, you know what I mean, running
Yeah.
through me, you know what I mean, something like that, So that makes sense. You need a defense field.
Yeah.
And to be able to go through that because just the wind, the turbulence, everything that'll knock you over. You think you're on a straight path, and then boom, you get through that turbulence, and it
Yeah.
sucks you over, and there you go.
I'm in Canada. It's cold up here. Like I don't want to fly in the winter.
I know, but is it true? I heard that Canadians have some weird obsession of flying because they see seagulls fly, they see like geese fly, they see all these birds fly. So it's just an obsession of them that they just want to soar. Is that true?
Uh, maybe with some. I it's possible. It's
Possible.
possible.
It's, I mean, I'm gonna put you in the yes category because you said you want to fly, but I like the
Yeah.
invincibility part because you could have like, like Marvel when Iron Man added that insulation in Spider-Man suit.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm toasty in here. Yeah, like if I'm toasty and I'm flying through and I happen to be in the Arctic Circle, well then hey, at least I won't die. You know what I mean? I won't freeze to death or have a frozen pinky at the end of this. So yeah,
Exactly.
I feel you on that. So thank you so much for coming on to my show, Danny, and just sharing this experience with me because I really do enjoy your perspective. And if you do write that children's books and convert it, please let me know. I'd love to share it and just check it out, buy it. You know what I mean? Since I'm a children's author, I'm all about it. So, to start wrapping up the show, what can be some lasting words of wisdom you can give us?
I'm going to say this. Victims have wounds, victors have scars.
Ooh.
When you see yourself as a victim, it means there's an open wound that has not healed. When you see yourself as a victim, all this is happening to me, you're not seeing the purpose. And I understand if people are struggling, they won't see purpose. They do see themselves as a victim. But if you can find purpose, if you can let that wound heal, you're the victor. And very simply,
Mm,
it's just, again, it's like finding that purpose, that there is a reason, asking, what can I learn? And that is the difference between a wound and a scar.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, victim or victor, you choose which path you want to be on, right? You got to remember, you have to choose to be a victor. It's okay. We all are a victim at one point, but you got to stand up, walk it off, brush it off, and keep it going because we are all victorious. So, yes, thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much, Danny, for this time. And anybody out there that's listening who wants to know more about Danny, his book, because why would you not? After listening to this conversation, right? Why would you not? If you don't, come talk to me. We'll figure it out. Please check him out. I have his lovely photo on my website, along with access to his website, so that you can continue on thinking, right? So, with that being said, bye.